Welcome to Mindfulness Manufacturing. My name is Trevor Blondeel. Spending 25 years in manufacturing, I discovered the real impact we have on turnover, communication, and the ability to manage change is how we show up. That's the essence of emotional intelligence. In each episode, we bring a guest or message to expand your skills, engage your people, and grow your organization. So let's jump in. Retention and recruitment. In the research I've been doing with our company, Manufacturing Greatness, this is the biggest challenge right now in manufacturing. And so what sets one manufacturer apart from another? Or if you're a leader and you're listening to this podcast right now, how do you set yourself apart from others? One area that we've been talking more about is just time and responsiveness, and really just that overall customer experience. Because 20 years ago, it wasn't that big of a deal. If you're not selling to a consumer, what is customer experience for? But now we're realizing that, the brand of our business is important. We see more and more manufacturing plants posting on social media that aren't selling to the general public. So I found the best customer experience person in North America, anywhere that I know, and I got to know Jay Baer. He's a business growth and customer experience author, researcher, and advisor, a 7th generation entrepreneur, 7 best-selling books, and created 6 multi-million-dollar companies. Come on, man. He's in the Professional Speakers Hall of Fame. He was voted the #1 global guru for online marketing and #2 global guru for customer experience. And my favorite part is in his spare time, he's the most popular tequila influencer and educator on the planet. Welcome, Jay.
Trev, thanks so much. Appreciate it. We can do this whole episode on tequila if you want. That's fine.
And I would like that because, I think this we'll probably have some of those margaritas this weekend. So,
yeah, absolutely. Let's do it.
But yeah, I'll let the listeners know right now on Instagram. What's the handle?
Tequila Jay Baer. Tequila
Jay Baer. And I have been watching that, so I don't have to ask you all the questions. You got all the answers right there. I've been following you. It's awesome, Jay. Just such a fun part. Yeah. So, you and I met. I got to see you speak live. You got the book, The Time to Win, How to Exceed Customers' Need for Speed. You were speaking to a bank, and I got to see you live. And all I could think about was like, oh my goodness, this is manufacturing. This is it. So tell us more on how you got onto the speed.
Well, I've been doing this for 30 years, and my role in business is to identify a trend or a pattern, validate that trend with proprietary research that costs me a lot of time and money, but I wouldn't have it any other way. And then if it proves to be true, write a book and a presentation about it to inform business leaders like your audience on how to take advantage of this trend over, usually it's a 2 to 3 year period, because ultimately then everybody else does it and it's no longer a competitive edge. So I've written books about social media. I've written books about content marketing. I've written books about customer service. I've written books about a lot of things, but The Time to Win is about the relationship between responsiveness and revenue. Like, we've all heard the phrase time is money. It's been around for decades, but I don't even know why it was around, because it wasn't true, but it is true now. Now it is true. 2/3 of customers say that speed is as important as price. Think about that. 2/3 of customers say that speed is as important as price. And I have a question for you and for your audience. How many of you run your business as if that were the case? We have been caught up in this notion that, yeah, we're fast enough. We're as fast as we reasonably can be. But the whole time we're thinking that, our customers, and in fact, even our employees, expectations around what is fast, what is responsiveness, have steadily escalated year over year, even quarter over quarter. And now, entering the AI era, what we can constitute as fast or quick is going to change even more dramatically. So the way I started this whole process is my observation coming out of the pandemic was that, I think people care about their time more than they used to, because we had all these trends. You remember out of the pandemic, things like the Great Resignation and quiet quitting, and people wanting to work from home because they don't want to drive into the office, as many of you are doing right now. It's a little tougher in manufacturing to work from home, but not entirely, depending on your job function. You've got this new trend. You talked about conferences, this new trend called bleisure travel, which is the combination of business and leisure travel. It's when you bring your kids to the conference and double dip the trip. Like, that's a real thing. thing now.
Yeah.
Baseball, right? Baseball fans, they got a pitch clock now.
Love
So
it.
the average game is 26 minutes a night shorter. People love it. Like all of these trends, it's all the same trend, which is that we care about our time more than ever. And as a business, as any business, you need to respect the time of your employees, your potential employees, your customers, and your potential customers in a way that did not matter 3 years ago, but definitely matters now.
For manufacturing, I'm even thinking just the recruitment process.
Huge.
There's such gold in there, and it's amazing today in 2024. It takes weeks to get someone through a process, and then they're waiting for the phone call. They're not sure when the next phone call is coming.
Absolutely.
Like, could we just tell them that we're going to call you next Monday?
And I'll give you an example of this. A good friend of mine, who I actually sold my most recent consulting firm to, built a AI-driven app for hiring for a manufacturing company in Arizona.
Cool.
Because the problem was that you put out a job description and you solicit resumes and you get them from LinkedIn or Indeed or whatever you use for resume solicitation. And then once you get a sufficient stack, right? Like once you get, 10, 20, 50, like whatever is your magic number, then the hiring person starts to filter through them and like, yeah, this one's good, this one's not good. And you sort of make your 3 piles and stuff. Well, then after you make the 3 piles, you probably have to show it to somebody in the department just to make sure you're on the same page. And then they kind of go through their sift and sort, but maybe that person's out of town on vacation, whatever. And then ultimately you're like, all right, here's our candidate pool of, let's say 7 people. Let's set up interviews with those folks, either, on Zoom or Teams or have them come into the office directly, whatever. Well, then you got to go through the whole process of scheduling the interviews. Here's what was happening. By the time all that happened, the best candidates had already been hired by somebody else. Because if you're looking for a job, you're not looking for a job eventually, you're looking for a job now. So they built this AI tool that automatically puts the resumes or the job description out. Every time a resume comes in, the AI bot instantaneously scans it. And if it meets a certain criteria, a threshold of goodness, if you will, that they have managed, then the AI tool automatically contacts the candidate, sets up an interview time, schedules the Zoom meeting, interviews them using an AI bot, and then sends a summary of the conversation to the hiring manager to see whether or not they want to take the next step. So instead of this taking weeks, it literally takes a day, and you know whether this candidate's viable or not. And you never lose talent again.
Jeepers.
And the cost of that is like almost nothing. Like it is painfully inexpensive to do something like that. It's just understanding that where speed matters the most is in the things that you get stuck internally. So this is one of the things that's so important when I encourage businesses to be faster, right? And the reason the book is called The Time to Win is that you have a window of opportunity. I think it's 24 to 30 months max, where you can use speed as a distinct competitive advantage. Right. You can outperform competitors in your market. You can outperform competitors in terms of talent acquisition. You can outperform competitors in terms of talent retention. All of these things will happen if you just are faster at all the things and more responsive. But so often, Trevor, what keeps us from being faster isn't an attitude or a culture or want to. It's that you've got all of these weird handoffs and processes internally that each take 2 days longer than they need to. And when you add all that up, it's 12 days. Right. And so this is where AI is really going to help, because AI allows us to automate the mundane tasks, the sticky wickets, and just kind of make everything quicker.
Yeah. And sometimes, Jay, we get stuck in our 4 walls, right? Because, we're going to the same plant every day. We got a lot going on, but it's just a great example of all you got to do is just, go outside your 4 walls, look at some of your competitors in other industries.
Yeah.
I think that's why it's so fascinating that I'm listening to you talking to a bank, and it's like all I can do is connect the dots to manufacturing, like in so many different ways. From that recruiting example to internally. Because one of the challenges we have, Jay, is we're walking down the shop floor and somebody asks something, and then somebody else asks something, and then the speed of getting back back to them at all, it's like an old age problem. So what are the different tools that we can use that what can we change? And maybe it's not, we always talk about culture.
I'll tell you one of the best tactics when you're answering questions and I've been using this not just in my business life, but in my personal life as well. And I've been doing this for about 2.5 years now. And it has made a huge impact, not just on my business relationships, but with my spouse and my kids and my friends and my mailman, like across the board. And we call it reply without answers. Reply without answers. Mm-hmm. So typically, less so when you're walking through the floor because someone just stop you face to face. But typically, if you get something like a phone, email, live chat, Teams or Slack notification, depending on what you're using for internal communications, somebody has a question for you, especially as a manager, leader, owner, and you don't know the answer. Mm-hmm. What do? Well,
put it to the side.
Go figure it out. Like you set it aside, and you're like, okay, well, I'm going to go figure it out. I'm going to ask accounting. I'm going to check with the supplier. I'll ask HR. I'll Google it. Like whatever you have to do to manifest the answer, you do that. And then once you have the answer, you respond to the person and say, here's the answer. Don't do that anymore. Because the entire time that you're figuring it out, the person who asked the question is slowly freaking out. Mm-hmm. Because today, when we need something and we need information, if we don't know that somebody is actively accessing that problem, it creates a tremendous amount of anxiety. I'll give you an example. So if I send you an email, now this would never happen because you're hyper responsive, but just work with me. If I send Trevor an email and I don't hear back for 2 days, I start playing this mental game. Like, okay, haven't heard back. Did that go to spam? Did I attach something to that email that might have caused it to go to spam? Is it possible he's on vacation but didn't set out of office? Is he mad at me for some reason? Should I follow up this email with a phone call, or does that make me seem sad and desperate? Like you play.
It sounds like you're in my head right now, Jay.
Right, I know you play all these games, right? And meanwhile, none of that is true.
No,
you're just working on the thing. Right. And so I'm telling you, not just in your own plant, but with everybody do it this way. Somebody has a question, needs something from you. You say, great question. So great. In fact, I don't know the answer. I'm going to figure it out and then I'll let you know. And then when you do know, you get back to them. Because the second that you say, I got it, it takes it off of their to-do list and they put it on your to-do list. Mm-hmm. And the psychological change in that is dramatic. And there's 2 huge benefits to you. First, their perception of how responsive you are goes up dramatically because there's never any anxiety about whether this is going to happen. And second, here's the little secret tip. It actually buys you more time to respond, because one of the things we learned in the huge amount of research we did for this book is that psychologically, time to response is more powerful than time to resolution. So knowing that somebody's on it is more important than actually getting the answer you seek. This is why when you call cell phone company, cable company, airline, a number of different organizations, you always hear 2 things. First, they say calls will be answered in the order that they were received. And I got to tell you, every time I hear that, it makes me laugh because I think, like, what was the second choice? Like calls will be answered by height, right? Or by age. I'm like, what? Of course they're answered in the order there. I don't know why they have to tell us that. It makes me laugh every time. But then the second thing that happens more often than not now is they say estimated hold time 11 minutes, right? Yeah. Estimated hold time 11 minutes is sort of the digital automated version of reply without answers, right? Yeah. Like, oh, okay, 11 minutes. And you can decide whether to hang on or not. And this is the same approach. If somebody asks you a question, you say, I got it. And then you get back to them later.
Oh, it's every listener right now hearing this, we can all feel it. I felt it when you said it. It's like, I'm on hold. The music's on. Have they gone home? Like, is it quitting time there? Like, it's 5:00. Maybe they don't answer. Should I stay on for another 10 minutes?
Yep, absolutely.
And then once in a while I get the one that says, hey, you got wait time's 37 minutes. Would you like us to call you back in 37 minutes? I'm like, yes, I would.
Yeah, I love that feature. Love that feature.
Yeah. So we can start changing our thinking. And I like that. It's not just in manufacturing plants or on customer service calls. It's in our personal lives, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Like, for the listeners, I knew of you a long time ago, right? Jay, you're an influencer, and more importantly, you're very highly spoke of within the speaking industry, right? Like, you're a well-liked person. So, and what I learned right away interacting with you is that you didn't like drop your phone and pick up and call me, but you responded right away and said, hey, I see you. And then you would tell me what you could or couldn't do. And it was like, wow, what a great first just impression with him. And this, like, but it just made me feel so comfortable interacting with you and just cared for. It's kind of like, Yeah.
Thanks. It's one of the things that I've studied a lot in my business career is this notion that uncertainty creates anxiety, and anxiety keeps people's money in their pocket. And everybody's got that friend in the group text who never responds until like the last minute.
Yeah.
And you're like, bro, we've been talking about dinner plans for like 4 days, and just now you're popping in here, like, where you been? Like, everybody's got that friend, right? And that friend you love that friend, but that friend is annoying because it messes up everybody else's plans, right? And so it works the same way in business. We underestimate the problems that uncertainty causes for customers, potential customers, employees, and potential employees. And so one of the things I talk about in the book, you saw me say it on stage, is it's really critical, and I think manufacturing really should take heed of this, to close the uncertainty gap. And the uncertainty gap is the difference between what you know about what's going on and what the customer knows about what's going on. So inside your plant, you've got production schedule, you've got supply chain data, shifts, you just know what's up, right? Like, that's the whole idea. You're running your own plant. But the customer, in many cases, knows just bits and pieces of that. And historically, we've been very reluctant to make that kind of detail available to customers. It's like, okay, you place the order, we'll give you the order in 3 weeks. And what happens in between is not the customer's problem, and they don't want to know. They do want to know.
Yes.
People are trained now, because of the omnipresent information that's all around us on the internet. We are trained now to be informed, if anything, over-informed. So I learned this the hard way when I had my consulting firm. We would do customer experience strategy and marketing strategy for some of the biggest brands in the world, like huge, enormous, Fortune 100 companies. And so they'd pay us a bunch of money to build a strategy. And we're like, great. And then my team and I, we would go into our metaphorical workshop, and we would build a strategy, and we'd come out 75 days later with a strategy. And the work was great. Clients were happy. But I realize now, looking back, now that I've sold the business, that I totally screwed this up, because there was this huge uncertainty gap. We would take their money, build a strategy, and then 2.5 months later, magically emerge like from a chrysalis with a strategy, right? And I realize now that the entire time, these clients were like, did Jay steal our money? Like, what are they doing? Do they not have any questions? And we were totally on it. Like, we missed 0 deadlines in 13 years. Never missed a deadline in 13 years. So we had it dialed in internally, but the client had no idea that we had it dialed in. They were just like hoping for the best. And if I had to do it over again, I would massively over communicate progress to clients, right? I would have weekly email. Here's exactly what we did this week. Here's where we're going next week. Here's what's happening. And the best manufacturers do exactly that. They keep their clients hyper informed on status, and it eliminates the big surprise at the end, which is what kills customer relationships.
Yeah.
And a lot of people in manufacturing say, well, Jay, our clients don't want to have that much detail. And I disagree. Yeah. Because I've worked with a lot of manufacturing organizations, and I've never heard somebody say the clients want us to stop informing them so well.
And so, like, I'm feeling that, because inside the 4 walls, we'll be sitting in a boardroom saying, hey, the customers come out with new information. We may not need to work next weekend. It's a long weekend, but we're not sure yet. So don't say anything to anybody. It's kind of like, why not? Like, why not tell them we have some information, but we don't have the answer yet? Like, come on.
That's right. And I will acknowledge that this is different than it used to be, right? And so people might be thinking, well, Jay, that's, we would never inform clients at that level of granularity. We would never proactively, respond to a question without the answer. And I know. I understand. I am an old person now. I get it. Like, it wasn't like that when I was younger either. But we've got to understand that our relationship with time has changed, and our relationship with information has changed. You've seen me do this example in a presentation. Like, it wasn't that long ago in the big history of the world that if you wanted to get transportation, you would have to use a payphone to call a taxi, and they wouldn't tell you any information. They would just say, okay, he'll be by to get you. You didn't know how much it was going to cost, or how long it was going to take, or which taxi was your taxi. You didn't know anything. And we were okay with that. And now, of course, you get a taxi a ride on Uber and you know everything. You've got like, to the minute and to the penny. We're just trained now as a species to have so much more information at all times. And you can't be like, yeah, that's true in society, except if you're buying something from a manufacturer, and then we're just going to keep it all opaque. Like, that's not going to work.
No, that doesn't work. The other thing I was thinking about, Jay, when I was reading some of your material is just, I always hear it's consistency and it's communication, right? And it's like, how do we become more consistent in our communication? Because sometimes, when we're on and the plate's not so full, I do get back to you. And then, but sometimes I get lost and then I don't get back to you or I forget. He got back to me the last couple of times, and now he's not. That the consistency is a struggle.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things. That's a smart point, Trevor. I would say one, it's training your whole team, not just people in customer service, but everybody answers questions, whether you're in customer service or you're an executive. Training the whole team as to what your expectations are as an organization for responsiveness, right? There's even software out there that helps manage that and says, it's been this long since you responded, you should respond to that person, those kind of things. So that's first one is training and saying, look, organizationally, this is how we do this, right? It's not an individual choice, it's a company policy. So basically putting metrics around responsiveness is kind of step one.
I like that.
Step two is, as an individual, trying to box your time to say, okay, look, I'm gonna spend these 30 minutes, these 2 windows per day, just responding to people, right? And so you don't. A lot of times in a busy environment, the response time is dictated by the rest of your calendar, right?
Well, a lot of meetings, Jay. I'm in a lot of meetings.
Yeah, and so the question is, all right, but what's more important, that meeting or responding to the client who's paid you a bunch of money who has a question? Like, what's actually more important? So the best way to do it is to say on your calendar, I don't do meetings from 10 to 11 or from 10 to 10:30 and 3 to 3:30. From 10 to 10:30 and 3 to 3:30, those are my windows to respond, and don't book over it, right? So that's a really good technique. And then the third thing is this problem's going to solve itself a little bit because instead of writing emails, you're just going to have your Microsoft Copilot or your Google Gemini or whatever flavor of AI tool you have. And you're going to say, literally with your mouth, please write a 3-paragraph email to Trevor about booking the podcast. And that will happen in 4 seconds. It'll take you another 20 seconds to tighten it up, and then you're done, right? So every node of communication is going to get dramatically faster and more efficient. So you should be able to respond in less net time off your calendar.
One of the challenges is like continuous improvement is big in manufacturing. Like we're always trying to find that small improvement. And if you ask people about giving ideas, usually it's, well, I never heard back on the last idea. So like putting some automation in there of like, okay, so if we're really serious, if we really want serious about continuous improvement, like we know what the driver is, like get back to the person, the answer they want to hear or don't, or at least just let them know, hey, we're looking at it, some time frame. The other one that you're making me think about is, we talk about connect the top to the shop, right? And it's all about connecting the top of the shop, but it's like as a measurement, as an executive team, to the supervisors, to the team leaders, to the team member, what is our response time? Like what does good response time look like to you? Because it might be different to me. And maybe we can document that. Maybe we can measure that somehow. Like that's culture change.
You should, and nobody documents it. You're exactly right. Like if I ask you, hey, if somebody on your team has, let's go back to your continuous improvement. If somebody in your team has an unsolicited idea for improvement in the workplace, how long does it take you on average to look at that and respond? Nobody knows. You don't have actual data on that. You have a collection of stories. Well, the one time I got this question, we got back to it in 2 days. Like this other time, it took 7 days. Like it's all anecdotes, right? And this. Any organization that's driven by Six Sigma principles and continuous improvement knows that you can't improve based on anecdotes. You have to improve based on data. So one of the key lessons in the book, The Time to Win, is to perform what we call a got it audit. And a got it audit asks you to actually put numbers around how long it takes people to get it. Like how long does it take employees to get what they need? Customers, potential customers, colleagues in other departments. Like how long does it take? Like what is your responsiveness today? And nobody knows because nobody measures it, which is amazing to me because in my company, we've been doing this for 10 years. If somebody has a question about whether or not I can give a speech, our response time averages 21 minutes, but it will always be inside an hour, including weekends, unless something crazy happens. Right. So we literally measure how long it takes either myself or my agent to get back to people. Because if somebody's like, hey, I would like a speaker, they're not like, I'd like a speaker in 2028. Like, they're actively seeking a speaker, right? And if you understand, one of the key findings from the book is that 51% of customers will hire whomever contacts them first, regardless of price.
Yes.
I think it makes sense to be first.
You told the story, right? You had 3 painters.
Yeah.
And the most expensive guy was the guy that got back to you first, and that's who got the job.
Well, and it's because, and this is sort of a big sort of thesis of this whole work, we're in a place as a society where we interpret speed as caring, and we interpret responsiveness as respect. Now, whether that's true or not doesn't matter. That's how we interpret it. If you call your attorney and he gets back to you in 2 hours, you feel one way about that business relationship. If you get a call back in 2 days, you feel a very different way entirely. Yeah. And eventually, those feelings equal money.
And I know how I'm feeling about my accountant right now. I got a much better deal on my new accountant, and my taxes still aren't filed. And it's like, oh my gosh, Jay's messages are ringing in my ear. Yep. Know that, Trevor.
You are now one of the 2/3 of customers who believe that speed is as important as price?
Oh, I am it. And you know what? For the listeners right now, as they're driving to work, I hope, every time I talk to you, Jay, my mind is a little different, right? You kind of help shift our thinking. And so I just so appreciate you sharing these messages with manufacturing, because, man, you take one of these today, like, you can listen to this podcast and you can make a difference in your plant today. So many different ideas you gave us. Your newsletter, the Baer Facts, like, I just love it. It's one, you get so many newsletters, but yours is the one that I always go to. I want to make sure I go through it because you got such interesting information. What's the best way for our listeners to follow you? We're going to put all these links in the show notes.
Oh, thanks so much. Appreciate it. The book is The Time to Win. If you go to thetimetowin.com, you can get access to some of the key themes. You can get the actual research that powers the book, etc. The book itself is available on Amazon. It's very, very short because it's about speed. So you can get the book for $9 or whatever on Amazon, which is a smoking deal. And the newsletter, thanks for mentioning that, is the Baer Facts. It's thebaerfacts.com, BAER, thebaerfacts.com.
And manufacturers will love your book because they don't like 400-page books, Jay.
It's a 50-page book. I got you covered.
And the size is in the palm of my hand. It's brilliant, man. It feels like, I know it's a lot of this is written for customer service and for big, huge companies, but I tell you, a small family-sized manufacturing plant will benefit from this. And it doesn't matter the size of the plant; it's a matter how you're making people feel and how you get back to them. Thanks so much for coming on, Jay. I appreciate you.
Great to see you. Thanks a lot.
Hey, folks, appreciate you taking the time to join us today. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with someone. Haven't subscribed yet? Do it now. Remember, if you want results, the key is increasing your awareness of how you show up.